Welcome into the FanSpeak Network. I am your host, Justin Bruni. Joining me, as always, is my co-host and partner, Mr. Andrew, the TD King, Raub. Happy Friday, sir. We are recording on a Friday night. How are you?
Good, sir. Good. I don't know if you just saw I did the Chris Collinsworth slide in there in the very beginning.
I didn't. I was around the camera here. You're over here right now.
Everyone loves it. They love the slide.
I like that. It's also like the the DVD symbol fitting right into the corner. Just like that symmetry. Also a nice clear path. We like clear paths. We're going to be talking about clear paths tonight. Clear paths to production. Clear paths to playing time. Clear paths to recovering from injuries. Clear paths to stacking. We're going to be talking about a lot of clear paths. We're here to talk some strategy. We're doing our 2024 best ball draft guide. We're going to be going over a variety of topics over the next couple of strategy shows. We have a good amount of topics in line for you tonight. Anything that you're excited to talk about this evening, Andrew?
No, but I think it's I wouldn't say excited, but I think it's important, the information that we're going to go over for when people are drafting. I mean, there's a certain way to draft that it makes sense when you're like building your teams and going through roster construction and doing bringbacks and how to navigate injuries. So there's a lot of good information here, and it's something that I don't think a lot of people put in the forefront of their mind when they are drafting. There's certain types of way to do it, and then there's ways that just really don't make sense and the data doesn't back it up. So I think as we go through this, it might lead to some eye-opening moments for some people. So I'm excited to help the people get better at drafting.
Dig in. Let's dig in. Yeah, the streets are getting muddy. The lobbies are getting very different, we'll say, from a month ago, 3 weeks ago even. So we are going to notate that as well. Some strategies that we're bringing up that may wind up being more effective maybe like mid-draft season earlier on as opposed to now. And I think a lot of that specifically speaks to, bringing players up the board, kind of throwing out ADP. And I think that method right now is kind of the move in the streets. What the general populace is doing is really hopping off of ADP, and they're more so getting their guys or making instant reactions to whether it be news or injury reports or just flashes, some clips that someone saw on Twitter. Oh, well, that's my guy now. Now I'm all in. Whatever it is, there's vast and volatile changes in ADP. And, this advice is definitely going to help you, again, navigate these tough waters. So let's dig in. Before we do, be sure to smash the like button, share the video, and follow the FanSpeak Network. We're going to be here all year long with all sorts of best ball content, betting, and more. Lots of fantasy conversation still to go as we get into the start of the year. Andrew, we've got 4 topics that we're going to be covering this evening. We're covering stacking, injuries, roster builds, and sleepers. For reference, our part 2 episode, we're going to be covering mistakes to avoid, best ball tools, exposure rates, and positional strategies. So look out for the part 2 of this draft guide. There is always a lot to talk about, but we want to be, concise, thoughtful, and purposeful here. We don't want to get off into too many different directions, overloading you guys with information. So we're going to break this down into a couple of different episodes. Andrew, we're leading off with stacking. What topics are we going to be covering here?
So we got team scoring potential, weekly ceilings, correlation, average draft position, positional balance, and diversification. We might as well just start at the top with team scoring potential, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, do you stack rocks? I love this stacked rock photo. I've never stack rocks. You see people stacking rocks?
I do. I used to do a lot of hiking on the Appalachian Trail since obviously I'm from Pennsylvania. They call it the rockiest portion of the Appalachian Trail around here. So as I would walk through the Appalachian Trail, there was a lot of those formations around that people would build. Same thing, I've been to some oceans where people will stack them as well there. So I don't personally do it, but I do find them to be pretty cool when I do see them.
You were leading in kind of like, I thought you were going to say like, yeah, man, I stack the shit out of rocks, not just ADP, but rocks too. You had me kind of going there for a second. I can skip rocks, but I can't do this. Like this is crazy. And yeah, I see the same things like when I just like, we'll go hiking or something on the weekend and you'll just see people like off to the side of a trail, just like stacking rocks. Like this is crazy. Yeah. Stacking rocks, stacking ADP. Let's get into it here. So team scoring potentials, we'll start off there. You're stacking players from high scoring offenses to maximize scoring opportunities and weekly upside. Benefits of that, you're just getting players that you have trust in, players with safer production floors. I think the cost there, the downside is typically ADP cost. How do you mitigate the two?
So I mean, there's a bunch of different ways that you can go with this. I think the highlights that people need to know is like, obviously you want to try to get the most points that you can on a weekly basis and yearly basis as well, right? So you got to really think about when you're building your team. If you go like, let's just talk about running backs, right? So running
Mhm,
backs, you don't want to take two running backs from the same team for an output of a team that probably won't have a ton of running back points scored, such as like the Raiders. Will Zamir White have a bunch of points scored? Potentially. We've never seen it though. And the
mhm,
backups there, go late. So it's easy to stack them. But honestly, like, why would you do that? Because I don't think you're going to have weeks where they're scoring 25, 30, 35 points together, right? Like,
mhm,
so it really lowers the maximum amount of points that you can get in your running back slots. You kind of want to, make sure that you're grabbing one from each team, or let's say you are going to do two. Let's say you grab Jameer Gibbs real early, right? Obviously,
mhm,
he has a little bit of an issue with an injury right now. Kind of want to back it up, right? You could take David Montgomery rounds later. I'm okay with that because both those guys shown that they could produce at a high
mhm.
level last year. So you really got to think about that when you're going into teams. With that said, I think it's more of an okay scenario for you to do that with wide receivers, such as like if you want to go with a couple of the Packers guys, right? Because
Mhm.
I don't think any of them are really going to get a ton of exposure, a ton of the targets. I think it's going to be spread around, so I'm okay doing it with that. Or if you want to do it at a high level, I'm not, I don't really love to do it with like the Chase and Higgins or the Waddle and Tyreek because I think it's just too much of a cost personally.
Mhm.
But I see people doing that, and if you do it in the right manner, it can work out for you. So I really just think that you got to think about your team,
Your
look at it.
your finals team last year had Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. No,
It did, yes, and it actually had Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. So I
I-
mean, it was. So did it work for me?
it
Yeah,
can like
right,
that. That's the whole point.
right.
Like, and coming into these drafts too, like there's always a fluidity, right? Like doing something like that, exactly what you did. I don't mind even at running back. And you and I have kind of agreed on this. Like, at least if you go with six running backs, you should be fine. But we're even seeing 2-7-7-2 builds becoming a little bit more normative. In the general streets, right? People are
Yeah,
getting a little bit more creative. They're taking their shots. 3-6-6-3-1 best ball mania 4. So there's no one way to skin a cat here in the best ball streets. Like there's lots of different paths and unique ways to build rosters to get high yielding results, whether it be making the finals, top 10, win it all, whatever it is. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. Going kind of back to the team scoring potentials, like when I'm looking at what I could do with like double stacking the Bills, that's very like cheap, right? Like I can double stack Curtis Samuel and Shakir if I want to, if I only have Allen. If I swung and missed on Kincaid or James Cook and I don't really have any other bringbacks, I'm not so against that as so much as I am against getting like Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goddard. Like I've seen a lot of people really go all in on that that Eagle stack early. And I think that people are getting a little bit too overweight. And that's because of the appeal of the high scoring offense. But the data supports that, you really don't want to go over three, players from one stacking on a team on your roster. Four is kind of a stretch. I think four is ideal if you get it, position by position by position. Like, you know, quarterback, running back, whether it be top starter, depth piece, whatever, receiver, tight end, if you're going to have four. But if you're still doing three, I am okay again with the appropriate cost. Like, and a good example is you have the Bills and the Eagles, both really good scoring offenses, but the ADP for their stacking opportunities is much different and much deeper, obviously, for the Bills.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're 100% correct. I mean, really, you just got to look at the team. Is that team? If you want to, easy look, right? Like how many times do we see that Vegas is wrong? Not many.
Mhm,
If you want to go look at like the top like 16 teams that they think are going to put up points,
mhm,
that's an easy way to kind of think in your mind like, all right, these are teams I could probably have three of the same players from this team and
Hmm.
feel okay about it. You have the Chiefs, you have the Bills, you have the Dolphins, right? You're like all those teams that are going to score a ton of points. It's more okay to kind of go that route and take three from that team, even four roughly, depending on how you're mixing that up, with the positionals.
Hmm.
But there's definitely a wrong way to do it. I mean, you don't want to put five on your team from like the Raiders, right,
Right.
or like the Seahawks. I don't think that they're going to
Hmm.
put up a shit ton of points either. So there's
Hmm.
there's certain teams. So really, you just got to think about that when you're kind of going through and figuring out how you want to build this and how many players from each team you kind of want
Hmm.
to take.
And likewise, in reverse of top scoring teams, you're looking at lower scoring teams, lower projected scoring teams, and you're taking your shots there. I mean, you don't want to get too overweight, kind of like Andrew said. You don't want five players stacked up from the Raiders, probably not the Panthers or the Patriots either, but getting those type of stacks into your builds, double stacked or triple stacked into your lineups. I do think that's important because if you can hit on, even less than a handful, even 3 or 4 spike weeks with those group of players with like a threesome like that, that's a high leverage point because most people won't have that combination that you have. And I think even early on, like less people were like trying to triple stack. I feel like we went from like a really casual like off season where people were just kind of stacking with ease, getting a lot of falls in players. Then you were able to like really easily stack and strategize, and now it's just chaos. Now it's just ADP everywhere, just up and down the board. We saw Jalen McMillan last night going round 13. It was crazy. We saw, I think, Cooper Cup going round 2. I mean, we've, just every draft, there's always something new that's just popping my eyes wide open. So you also want to take into effect the low scoring teams, again, that you can leverage into your stacks and your builds. Weekly scoring, we'll move on here. Boost your team's weekly scoring by stacking QBs with multiple pass catchers for explosive scoring weeks. Again, that kind of parlays into what we were just talking about. I want to do that in offenses where we have a lot of passing volume. We're going to be in the scoring territory a lot, and maybe there's not as strong running back play. Maybe like the Dallas Cowboys. If you want to get Lamb and Cooks with Dak, that's a situation where I'd like that approach.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Or if you want to take, Josh Allen and Kincaid and Coleman or something like that, like, yeah, I
Sure.
mean, and that's the way to do it. Obviously, I'm always hashtag draft like you're right. There's no reason that you should be drafting scared, right? Like you want to go in because you're trying to win it all. You're trying to make yourself a boatload of money if possible. So go draft like you're right. Don't draft like, well, what if this player gets hurt? What if I? No, stop thinking like that. Draft like you're right. Draft like
Hmm.
you think that this team's going to score a ton of points because you're probably not drafting one team, right? Like, you're here watching this because you want to get better and you want to draft more teams. So
Hmm.
go in, draft like you're right, and draft like you think that team can score a ton of points. Because if you're just trying to middle yourself and score 110 points every week or something like that, that's not going to get you there. I believe the data was like on average to advance out of the first pod, you need to
Hmm.
generally score about 145 weekly points. So
Yep.
you need to kind of think about that as how can I maximize my weekly ceiling scoring potential instead of just middling yourself.
No, exactly. Yeah, when it comes down to the pods, super triggering word. When it comes down to the pods, yeah, you're going to have the high yielding results. And typically on those teams, I was getting production from top offenses. I know we just watched Megan's show. She had John Boy Beats on there talking about 2 versus 3 QB. I had a lot of top teams with 2 QBs, like Josh Allen, and then a dart throw on Sam Howell. That was a top combination. I think I also had some Patrick Mahomes and Sam Howell. So being able to hit on the early and the late guy is also really important there as well. All right, we can move on to injury risk and diversification. And this topic I think is going to come up, just diversifying your stacks and your overall portfolio to mitigate injury risks and avoid overcommitting to a single team. Is there any team right now you feel you're a little overweight on?
Um, I think just because I'm worried about the quarterback and his foot. The
Hmm.
the Cowboys, I think I'm a little overweight on. I've taken a lot of Brandon
Interesting.
Cooks. I got a lot of Jake Ferguson. I got a lot of
Hmm.
Dak. That can easily go wrong for me if Dak gets injured again or this foot
Hmm.
issue that he's kind of working through lingers.
I thought he shedded his boot already.
He did, and he's back practicing to full. But we all know
Mhm.
how those injuries kind of flare up. You're
Linger,
when you
yeah.
get in game time and you're taking off and you're running and you're cutting or whatever the case may be. All it takes is one person, one offensive or defensive lineman to fall on his leg, and twist his ankle or something that puts him out a few weeks, right? Like that's going to really hurt my portfolio because then the max points I can get are lowered, right? So that's
Mhm.
a team, and there's another team that I'm really excited about, and I kind of feel like I'm on an island because a lot of people are poo pooing them a little bit. Is the Jags? I have a ton of Jags exposure as well,
Mhm.
but again, I mean, we do a ton of teams, so I try to look at the exposures and diversify myself because two BBMs ago, I went hot and heavy on a bunch of players I really liked. It didn't work out for me because some of them got injured, some of them weren't
Mhm.
as good as I thought they were going to be, so it hurt. Last year, I diversified myself. Long story short, made it to the BBM finals because I did diversify myself, and I still have player takes. We all do. There's players that we really like, but you kind of want to manage your exposures somewhere in the ballpark of like 25 max for me normally,
Mhm.
and all the way down to a few depending on what player that is. But you kind of want to hedge yourself a little bit and make yourself into like the 10 to 15% on a ton of players because all you need is one team to make it in there to make all your money back in BBM. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. Don't not take players because you have 18% of them, but make sure that you're not going 30 plus percent because unless you have
Mhm.
a really 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 strong feeling on somebody, it could really backfire on you.
Andrew, do you remember probably maybe like around 100 drafts, right? 100 drafts. You remember like what percentage I had of Austin Eckler when I posted my 100 draft exposure list?
Mm, man, I don't, but I'm gonna say just because I know you like to draft and you were probably somewhere at like 26%.
It was 27. Now he's down to 24. And that again comes from shifting. Like Andrew and I are always on the pulse of our stacks, our exposure. So like we're obviously like, we're podcasting about this right now. We're very on it, right? But if you're doing the same thing, and it doesn't have to be so intense. I mean, there's lots of tools out there that you can use that can make this very easy for you. We use Best Ball Overlay a ton, and specifically speaking to stacking, it can actually show you what stacks you're taking the most of. Maybe it might highlight to you, oh, I am taking too much of that team, or oh, I actually do want to balance out my stacks. The Jags are my second most exposed stack list, or stack team, I should say, right behind the Titans. And they play each other week 17. And that also goes into correlation. Another topic that we're going to go into here is, it's just another layer of the stacking, right? Like, oh yeah, I got my QB and my receiver, but let's also get the QB and the receiver of their opponent in week 17. Let's dig deeper. Let's get more unique and get those opportunities for high yielding results that the data does support, which is week 17 correlation and just obvious, uh, stacking with explosive offenses. Maybe they don't seem explosive. Some of them, coming in like the Commanders last year, they certainly put up a lot more points than they did the year before. Wasn't great for their football team, was it, Andrew? But we loved it in fantasy.
Yeah, I mean you're 100% right. Just because the team isn't great in the regular NFL by win and losses, it doesn't mean that they can't put up valuable fantasy points. And it is nice when you can find something later in the draft for a team that may not do well in the regular NFL, but will put
Mhm.
up some points. You really want to be nose on the ground and kind of sniffing some of that stuff out.
All right, next up, we've got ADP. So, obviously, average draft position. Strategize your stacks based on ADP to avoid overreaching and maintain roster flexibility. Now, while we say that, that's just preaching good draft skills and technique, right? Like, don't reach for stacks, let them fall to you because they will. And if you're drafting with volume, it may not happen that draft. It's going to happen the next one or the next one after that, or the majority of your drafts in general. Specifically, if you're like Andrew and we're just constantly like in the middle of the 6, 7, 8. I know that you're actually more in the back end of that, but I am definitely living 6 through 9. It's pretty exclusive for me, really. Um, but I do at times. I'm okay with value swapping. I'm okay with pulling someone up the board as long as I can get them back. And I think you just did this in the draft that we just had, where you drafted Caleb Williams, I believe, ahead of ADP, right?
Yeah, like 3 or 4 spots.
Okay, not that bad. But then you got a huge discount on Dak on the way back.
Yeah, he fell, oh man, like
It's like,
16, 17 spots.
yeah, and that's not completely abnormal. You and I have seen that before, but that's what we're talking about though. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to value swap. I'm going to bring Caleb Williams up ahead of Dak Prescott, creating a stack. I actually thought you were going to. I was being nice. That's why I said in the chat to you, hey, go ahead, Dak's yours, and you were just like, nope, Caleb Williams. I was like, holy, what the heck?
Yeah, and
And then I saw you were stacking.
yeah, and you bring up a good point. So like and I know this is kind of a little off topic with ADP, but
Mhm,
a lot of these statue quarterbacks, as people like to call them, guys that aren't going to run a ton, Dak, Kirk
mhm,
Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, right? Like if you have a piece of that and you know that like the guys kind of behind you don't or in front of you don't, depending on which way the draft is going, you can kind of wait on those guys because those guys generally don't get taken a ton without stacks
mhm.
because they don't hold the value like a Jaden Daniels would
Right.
or Trevor Lawrence or some of these guys who are going to run a little bit, Lamar, those guys are going to get taken generally at ADP. But if you have a piece of one of those statue quarterbacks, you can kind of wait on them a little bit sometimes because they're going to fall.
Mhm,
People generally don't take that. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at ADP. You kind of want to look at the people around you and who they have. And if they don't have a piece of that offense, generally you can get those guys to kind of fall back to you. So you really want to go into battle knowing some of the opponents that you have. After a few rounds, I'll look at some of the teams around me and kind of be like, all right,
mhm.
like this player doesn't have any of the guy that I'm kind of shooting for, from that team. So I kind of will wait on some of that, which is generally, again, what I did with Dak, and luckily he fell back, so that did help. But I mean, everything you said about ADP and kind of how to strategize it is 100% accurate.
Well, I want to spin that back to you really quick too, because of something you mentioned about waiting for those quarterbacks. What type of stack do you think is more valuable? One with early wide receiver ADP, later or mid round quarterback ADP, or high end ADP for both?
Again, generally, like I'm going based off of team. So if it's
So let me give you an example. We talked about the Eagles and the Bills, so that right there, Allen and say, let's go with a middled one. I think Shakir is the middle ADP for receiver. No,
roughly, yeah.
yeah. So it goes Coleman, Shakir, Samuel, and then we'll do the top one for the Eagles. So looking at Hertz and Brown, that's round one, round four. You're looking at Allen round four. I want to say Shakir round 9 or 10.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I
Mm,
can't think off the top of my head where he's
yeah.
currently listed.
Or I'll even throw this caveat in there. The 49ers, fantastic offense. You can get Purdy in round 10 or I'm sorry, not or but combined with the either or of Debo Samuel and Ayuk in round 2.
Yeah, it's
Who's the
tough,
most
and
valuable of that threesome, of that set?
so well, and again, it really depends on your scoring too. So know your scoring, right? That's a
Yeah.
that's a thing that you should definitely go into, whether it's redraft or best ball, whatever. Know the
Mhm.
scoring. So
Well,
for
no, I
underdog,
just yeah, for underdog, right? Half point PPR.
yeah. So for underdog, like the way I kind of look at that is the Hertz Brown combo, I think, has the highest ceiling because Hertz
Mhm,
can run and AJ Brown is an absolute dog and has shown last year to put up historic numbers for stretches, right? So I think that that's the most
mhm,
valuable one. If you don't want to put that much into, because you're going to have to take that round one and round three ish, four ish, depending on where Hertz ends up.
mhm,
Uh, that one is it's more expensive, right? The other
mhm,
way, with your Allen also runs and has been like top two quarterback like 3 years running now.
mhm,
And then you can just wait, to get Shakir or Samuel or whatever. Like that one is less expensive and can help you build, more of a top heavy scoring wide receiver or running back combo,
right.
by only having to take Allen. So it really depends on generally how you like to draft and what you want your teams to look like.
Mhm,
I'm still going to say if I have the options to do those, and I know I didn't even hit on this yet, but the Purdy one is nice because of the weapons he has around him. So I
right.
generally like, I
Safe
kind
floor
of,
offense. I mean,
yeah,
you're not. We're not even talking about CMC. We're just talking about the quarterback and the receivers. I mean, the 49ers offense could potentially still be the best of that set.
Yeah, so like I generally like taking like the Purdy Samuel Kittle combo. I know
Mhm,
that's not like super expensive, but a little
mhm,
expensive. It kind of like is middle of the road expensive between like the three options that we're throwing here. So I'd actually take the Niners just because they're going to put up a bunch of points. Purdy's
mhm,
serviceable. He has great weapons around him. If one goes down, he has two or three more that are like really, really, really good. So I like that. But the Hertz one is the most interesting one to me, just because I think the ceiling for those two players at their
Right.
positions is very high.
See, I like the 49ers one the most because of the fact you're getting like literally the QB 5 or 6 from last season in round 10. So I'm getting like that top 5 exposure to potential scoring. Maybe he doesn't get to that. Again, maybe he gets, top 8, top 9, but even a little bit of regression, I'm in a really good space for ADP for building out a better roster. And then the only issue I have with those two receivers is that they both finished like what 12, number 12, number 14 in half point PPR last year. One of them could finish number 10 this year, and the other one could finish 19. Like there could be some volatility one way or the other, and that's my only issue there. But those are three really good examples. I'll kind of close the ADP conversation down with, I mean, if you're looking at top of the board ADP, if you're getting picks 1 through 6, the pairings of those receivers that are going, you're looking at CeeDee Lamb, you got around what 7 or 8 QB in Dak Prescott, maybe even round 9. I don't know where pick 100's at, but he continues to cross that threshold. With Justin Jefferson, you have a huge discount in Sam Darnold. With Jamar Chase, you've got Joe Burrow round 7, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa going around round 10, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff. I mean, Jared Goff now is going like round 11. So all of those front end receivers, they all have that back end value at QB, and I argue that they're just as valuable.
Yep. No, I agree.
All right, positional balance and roster construction. Align your stacking strategy with a balanced roster covering all positions effectively. I mean, this is really just more about not being underweight. Like, it's not really recommended to go 4 running backs. You can do it, but is that something that you want to do as stacking? Absolutely not. Like you're going to want to get some more diversification in there. I guess it would help you if you did that. If you had 4 running backs, I guess it wouldn't hurt to stack. But if you are, I just feel like I'm not getting as unique of a lineup, because if I have one running back of a foursome stacked with a roster, even if it's a good offense that I like, even if that guy duds that week, I'm still really exposed at the position in not the most positive fashion. Is there any other examples that are coming to mind for you?
No, I'm more or less looking at this bullet point here as like, so when you're trying to stack your team and build your roster here, right? Like
Hmm.
there's ways that you kind of want to go about it and not like if you look at the data, building a team with 4 tight ends does not advance very often. You're
Right.
automatically, no matter what, killing 2 roster spots every week. You could have 2 tight ends score for you as one as a flex, but
Hmm.
no matter what, you're killing it. Same thing with QB. If you take 4 QBs, 3 dead roster spots every single week, no matter what. Now, could you have a high scoring QB every week?
Hmm.
Sure, but if your wide receivers aren't up to par and aren't doing what you need them to do throughout the season for you, that's really going to hurt you. You can't go into drafts thinking I'm going to get 4 QBs or 4 tight ends. That just does
Hmm.
not work. So, you're really looking at when you're trying to stack, you want to make sure that you get the stacks that you want, but you don't want to overstack. You don't want to take 5, 6 from the same team. But you also need to make sure that when you're looking at your positions, you're also
Hmm.
not under the recommended amount or over the recommended amount, really. Like generally what we talk about QBs, 2 or 3, running backs. I'm actually okay with 4 if you get like 4 studs. If you're going, Bijan and then get Achan and then you get David Montgomery along the way and
Hmm.
Joe Mixon, something like that. Like you could do 4, sure. 4's the least for me. 7 is the most. Wide receiver, 6 least, 9 most, and then tight ends 2 or 3. I mean, that is where
Hmm.
the data has shown us year over year the best advance rates are somewhere in between those numbers. So you really just got to look and of course you can look at, hey, I drafted Mark Andrews. Probably don't need 3 tight ends. You could if you really want to, but you probably don't need to. You could get another tight end middle to later of the draft and be completely fine. So you got to think about who do I have as my number one at this position? If it's QB or tight end, the onesies as they call them. And
Hmm.
do I need 3? Is it a luxury? Sure, but I can probably stick with 2 and then fill out your team. So you just got to be mindful of that when you're drafting, that you're not over or under the recommended, and you're also not like completely stacking one team solely as 5 or 6 from that team, because that just the data has shown us that does not lead you to good advance rates.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head with the tight ends and the QBs. As far as like relating this to stacking, do you have any issue, or what I shouldn't say issue, but what do you prefer? And I think I know your answer because we've talked about this before. If you're double stacking receivers from the same team, early and late, double early, what's your comfort level there?
Again, it really depends on your build, but like I'm okay. Like I said, I don't like taking two really high. I don't like taking Brown and
Mm,
Smith and all that. I know that that's what got
mm.
me to the BBM finals, but I do think that team it got a really lucky stretch. Last year
Luck
with AJ
luck
Brown.
helps. Luck helps.
It does, yeah, yeah. But like generally, like I would not recommend people draft like that because it got really lucky to kind
Mhm,
of advance where it did. So, um, but yeah, I mean, it really just depends on the way that you're building it, and I prefer to take like if I'm gonna do double a friendship strategy as we call it, where two wide receivers from the same team. I like to do it
mhm,
high and then middle or low, or
mhm,
two in the middle are the preferred. So like I don't mind if you want to take Dobbs and Wicks from the Packers. That feels fine because you could probably get one of those guys to score you
mhm,
60% of the time throughout the season. Or if you want to go with like DK Metcalf and JSN. I think those two are serviceable
that's fine.
because you
Yeah,
got one guy who's established and one rookie with kind of an unknown
sophomore,
upside yet, right? Like,
sophomore.
yeah, I'm sorry, sophomore. With an unknown upside. So it
Mm,
really just depends on the team as well. But yeah, I don't recommend too high, and you could do too late. And I think the too late one really
mhm,
depends on the year. This year feels like an
mhm,
okay year to do it. If you want to take like Polk and Baker from the Patriots. I think that those
mhm.
are two, okay ones.
Yep.
Or um, the Giants, Hyatt and Wandale, something like that.
Mhm,
There's teams out there that have guys going later that you can do
yep.
it and it actually makes sense. So this one, this question for like the late, I think that that's a year to year answer, honestly.
Yeah, so the draft that we just did, I did Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston as my 7th and 8th receivers, and I've got Quentin Johnston with my last pick. It was like 29 picks after ADP, and that was a late round stack with Herbert, who was, also I think I took him like a couple of spots after ADP. I got lucky to get him. Or no, 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 never mind. I took him way ahead. Different player, different player. I think that was Baker Mayfield. I was thinking of.
Yep.
But I also like doing early and late. CD Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, I like that. Or like you had said, doing the double late value.
Yep.
Lastly, up here, stacking with correlation. So target strong positional correlations, QB and wide receiver, and consider adding players from opposing teams in high scoring games. I mean, we're really more specifically speaking about weeks 15 through 17 when we need high scoring games. Do you have any favorite team stacks for that period
I
since
mean,
we're in the
honestly,
ADP?
you can just go in and look at, weeks 15, 16, 17 if you want to. Obviously, on
Mm-hmm.
Best Ball Overlay, that's an easy thing. It shows it to you
Mm-hmm.
during the draft. So, obviously, check that out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, the big topics, week 17, right? That's where all the money's made. People love to go to week 17 and kind of look at what games are going to be high scoring. You got
Mm-hmm.
Houston, Baltimore, you got Philly, Dallas. There's some under the radar ones, Chicago, Seattle, I like.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're big in on the Titans, correlating back with the Panthers. So there's certain
Jags.
ones. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, the Jags. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
the Jags. There's certain ones I think you can do that with, and then certain ones that you
Mm-hmm.
kind of maybe want to steer a little clear of.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't go like too hot and heavy on the week 17 because if you don't make it there, it ain't gonna matter anyway. But
Mm-hmm.
I do see the importance of it. So you're right. Like we obviously want to be correlating slash stacking our quarterbacks, wide receivers, quarterback, tight end, whatever the case may be. But then if you're at an impasse as to who to pick, maybe look for some guys that are week 17 bringbacks for your team. If you went
Mm-hmm.
Hurts and Brown and it's round 17 and Jalen Tolbert sitting there, that's a good pick. If he might be the guy that you need that scores you, uh, you know, uh, 15 or 20 fantasy points because he had a really good game. Like it doesn't really make sense for me to go down there and take like Javon Baker when you have no week
Mm-hmm.
17 bring back because he's not a player that fits the mold of like is going to get you a Puka Nakua season, right? Like
Right.
that's just more of an anomaly than not. So I think that at the end of drafts, you want to be looking to correlate your week 17 bringbacks if possible.
Mhm. If you're looking to get really heavy into the playoffs, there are 4 teams that I would recommend. You nailed 2 of them. So the Bears and Seattle, and then 2 more NFC North teams in the Packers and the Vikings. Those 4 teams pretty much all intermingle with each other weeks 15, 16, and 17. And they all offer pretty friendly quarterback ADP, wide receiver ADP. So if you are looking to, try to galaxy brain for weeks 15, 16, 17, those would be four teams that I would start with. And you can do all sorts of different combinations that will land you with different matchups of each of those sets of teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to too if you just want to go look. There's plenty of
Mhm.
websites that you can go on to look at the week 15, 16, 17 games. Create yourself a little bit of a roadmap if you want to go in with a plan. There's tons of ways to kind of, as they say, skin a cat, right? There's a lot of ways that you could go about how to build a team and correlate it. So, tons of data out there for you to go look at.
All right, what topics are we covering for injuries?
Yes, injuries. We got buy the dip, balance, risk, and reward, diversify your roster, and evaluate recovery timelines.
All right, so let's get into buying the dip. Talk to me about some dips that you're willing to buy right now. When we're talking about minor injuries, like players that are hurt, maybe they're not practicing, but you've gotten enough information, you've read enough through the tea leaves that you're comfortable buying the dip right now.
I mean, I've seen Brandon Cooks be falling a little bit with
Hmm.
this knee soreness that he has going on.
Hmm.
That's a good one. Josh Downs, also a good one. Chuba right now. I know we haven't got like a ton of information after his little leg injury,
Hmm.
but I've seen him fall a little bit too. He's a good one. Um, Man, off the top of my head, I'm coming up blank here. Christian Kirk, another one, has a little bit of a hammy, right?
Hmm.
I
Yep.
think that he's going to be fine, and he's
Hmm.
fallen as well. There's enough guys out there that you can kind of look at. And again, we go over to bbmdb.com. You can
Yep.
look at it's fluctuating with their ADPs, right? Like somebody gets injured last week, look at the last 7 days data and see
Mhm.
where they're at, see if there is a dip potential for you. So I mean, again, easy way to go in and just look at some injuries and then go over to BBMDB and check out what's going on with their ADP.
When you're trying to decipher, or do I click this guy? Do I not? Is it to you like what you're hearing, or is it still somewhat like of a trust in the player? Like I know this isn't that serious. I trust this guy when he's healthy. Is there a balance there, or is it like really like critical to just have like the most up to date notes or whatever medical info?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you have to trust the player and the situation he's in within his team. Like Josh
Hmm.
Downs, I really like Josh Downs. If you look at the
Hmm.
data, him and Pittman were very close in a lot of categories when they're both on the field, and you can get Downs a shit ton later than you can Pittman. So
Hmm.
it's really based on scenario, as well as what I feel about the actual player. I do think the news is important too because with health news you can kind of read into it a little bit as to is this person getting back to practice soon? Is this
Hmm.
going to linger into the season? Are they going to miss, a good portion of the season as well? So I think it's a little bit of both. And friend of the podcast, Sebastian Fearon over at DGen Docs on YouTube, he does a great job with giving you information about the player and the
Hmm.
timeline that we might see on, if he's going to get on the field, what it might look like when they first get on the field again. Are they going to be 50%? Are they going to be 75? Are they going to be 100? Right. So I think it's a little bit of both. But again, there's plenty of places to kind of go and read some information about some of these injuries and what kind of time frames you're looking like for people to get on the field and what kind of output we can expect from them as well.
For me, it is about pivoting off of the players that I just have the higher exposure rates to. So if I haven't collected a lot of a player and he is hurt, that's when I'm probably more likely to buy the dip. For example, I had 13% Hollywood Brown. It's probably a bit lower now because I'm just a lot of drafts going on here as the days go forward. I would probably bet I'm closer to 11% now. Doing or betting or knowing I should say that I've done more than a handful of drafts in the past couple of days. He's going down. I don't really need to buy him, but someone that maybe I would buy is maybe like Jordan Addison because I have no Jordan Addison or Josh Downs. I have very little Josh Downs. I have a lot more, Michael Pittman and Adonai Mitchell. So I think that's where, at least for me, like where I'm willing to either, dive into maybe a little bit more risk or fade a little bit more risk. It really just depends on what I've kind of done up to, the presence of that new information that's been given to me about a player, whether it's, you know, Chuba Hubbard, who maybe just has a bruised knee, or Downs, who I'm seeing is probably going to miss at least 4, maybe 5 weeks. They're saying Hollywood Brown will come back maybe week 3. I think that's still conservative. But even Hollywood Brown in that offense, I'll take him back week 5, which kind of goes into evaluating recovery timelines. When I'm doing this, Andrew, I do exactly kind of like what I just said. I like to conceptualize kind of a tax on the news, right? Player A is expected back week X. Okay, now let's add on Y tax, right? Let's add another week. Let's add another 2 weeks. And from that viewpoint, now how do I feel? Like if there's going to be some margin of error here, how do I feel about that player now? Do you go through a similar process?
Yeah, a little bit. Again, it's situational based with the player and the team. For me, if I want to kind of give them a pass a little bit or
Mhm.
not, but yeah, I mean, I think that the way that you're looking at that is a good way. Give yourself a little bit of a lead way where if they say they're going to miss 2 weeks, add a third one in there and see how you feel. So I do think that the way that you're looking at that is a high level way of doing it. That way, you're not let down if the player
Mhm.
doesn't get on the field when the suggested timeline shows.
Was never good at algebra. Was never good at it. I was in that math class freshman year that everyone's like, man, you're not in special ed, but you're fucking stupid, dude. Like you're in that math class. Damn, like son of a gun.
Tough.
Yeah, we would just sit there and just do a workbook the whole time. It was just like super basic early 2000s education. Just like, hey, here's a packet, do it. That was every day. That was every day, and it was really easy. Like the first 20 packets were like really basic math. I was like, man, I can't believe I'm in this math class. This is piss poor. All right, balance risk and reward. Are you going to risk it for the biscuit? Is there any player right now that kind of fits this mold? I'm thinking of one. He's a tight end.
Are you thinking of Hawkinson?
I am thinking of TJ Hawkinson. Is there anyone else we can think of with this? Is it Nick Chubb?
Yeah, I mean Chubb as well. Hmm.
Trying to think of a
Yeah,
quarterback. I guess like any rookie QB could technically just like break out. Like Drake May could just be the next coming of, I don't know about Tom Brady, but he could put up
yeah,
modest rookie numbers, and be okay.
yeah. I mean,
Something like that. Like, or maybe like
we've
Bryce Young just explodes.
we've kind of been lucky with at this point in time when we're recording this that we don't really have like a ton of injury players that are like,
Mhm.
this person might miss 6 weeks or so.
Yeah.
I think we've been lucky thus far. But
And
I mean,
Andrew and I did not draft a lot of Rondell Moore
no,
out for
no,
the
we did
season.
not. Yeah, like so. I have a lot of Jerome Ford exposure. I'm high on Jerome
Mhm.
Ford. He played
Mhm.
well. I don't really have a whole lot of Nick Chubb because yeah, he's out there squatting 1 billion pounds, right? But that
Mhm.
that doesn't really help us on the field. He's not
But
squatting
he
on the
but he
field.
fits the
He's
mold of this, like balance the risk and
correct.
reward. Don't overcommit to injury prone players. Balance your roster to manage risk effectively. That
Yep,
doesn't mean you can't draft Nick Chubb.
correct.
You can still get some, but you'd want to do it at low risk, right? Like you want to get him
Yes.
as we've kind of been preaching as your fourth, your fifth, maybe even somehow your sixth running back drafted. And that was definitely more plausible a few months ago for sure. But he fits that mold. I'm trying to think of like just some other players that kind of fit this idea. Like they're more risky, you know. Um, like Javante Williams does he kind of fit that?
I mean, he's a year removed from it,
Just
though. I don't
just because the
know.
injury issues. I mean, James
Yeah,
Conner, you're always saying gets hurt.
yeah, that's
I mean, he
true. I mean,
does. I mean, he
last
kind
year
of
he kind of
generally
shoved it down
does.
my throat a little bit. When I faded him, so it just
Yeah.
I take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I mean, there's just guys that you just if they're already injured now and it's something that
Mhm.
might linger, it's hard to just overcommit on them unless they really fall down the board. Like Kendre Miller, right, has fallen down the board
Right.
a ton.
Mhm.
I'm okay now taking him because he's like last round,
Last
right?
pick,
Like it
yeah,
doesn't
round
really hurt.
18, yeah.
Yeah, so
Sure.
I mean,
Sounds fair.
I wouldn't go into every draft being like, I'm gonna take Henry round 18. Like, you don't want to do that just because he never gets on the field. But
Right.
few times it doesn't hurt. I mean, to kind of sum it up is if they're already hurt, don't overcommit to taking them a ton, even at a falling value. But
Mhm.
it's still okay to mitigate how much you fade them, because they could come back and be completely fine.
All right, lastly, we have diversify your roster. Again, a very consistent theme here throughout each category. Spread your picks across various positions and teams to mitigate potential downsides of injuries.
Yep.
I'm more reading in between the lines of, when someone gets hurt, are we going to diversify within that same stack? I'll frame it with Brandon Cooks and maybe Jalen Tolbert. I think you and I are both safe. Brandon Cooks is going to be back. He'll be fine. Let's say he wasn't. I knocked on wood. We're fine. Would you then start to buy instantly more Tolbert at value, or just be settled at what you already have from him because he's going to have an increased cost?
I guess it depends on how much the increased cost is, and also how
Hmm.
much exposure I have to the player who got injured. So, if
Okay.
like in this example, I have a bunch of Brandon Cooks right now.
Hmm.
I would be buying more Tolbert because he's still relatively cheap. I mean, round 16, 15, 16. It's not like he's
Hmm.
jumping up to round 12 where I feel like it's a way too high. He's
Right.
still going
He wouldn't
at
go
an
ahead of where
okay.
Cooks was going.
Correct.
You would just swap that ADP most likely at worst.
Yeah, I mean, but if that's the case, like I'm not taking Tolbert, I take Cooks because there's guys around there I would prefer even,
Hmm.
at that level like Jerry Judy, goes right
Right.
by Cooks. I'd rather take Jerry Judy than Tolbert.
Mhm.
But
I
Tolbert
like
for where
Rashid,
he's
but he's a little banged up right now.
yeah.
Wicks, like Dontavian Wicks at that ADP. Yeah.
Right. It's just again, it really just to answer that question, just depends on how much of the player I
Mhm.
have that went down, and also where that player
Mhm.
that might slot in for the downed player
Mhm.
goes within the draft. If it's not a high cost, I don't mind
Right.
taking more of it. If it is a higher cost, maybe I just kind of take some, but not overexpose
Mhm.
myself to that player as well.
My next example isn't related to injury, but it is based off of a big production swing, the same that injury provides. And that would have been the situation with Ayuk leaving the Niners, and you have a huge upswing for Debo. When something like that happens, and we're not saying it's going to, because at least to me, while we're recording this Friday evening, I think today's the 16th still. Yeah, I think it's still clocking in. We got 6 more minutes till midnight. I still believe that he's going to stick around there. I still believe he's going to be a 49er. But if a situation were to develop like that and you saw a player moved off the roster, again, are you okay buying the extra value added to the player like Debo that's being left? Or even saying, okay, no thanks to George Pickens anymore, if it's like, another receiver going somewhere where, oh, darn, I'm not the only guy anymore. I'm not the alpha. I've got a co-alpha, like a Brandon Ayuk next to me.
Yes, to both accounts. On the
Okay.
Debo side, like in the
Hmm.
scenario, I would want to buy him quicker before he rose, and then
Hmm.
kind of not take him as much at the risen ADP cost.
Gotcha.
Same thing with Pickens. I would probably wait to draft until I saw his ADP value fall. Once
Hmm.
it settled in and kind of plateaued, that is when I would scoop up some Pickens at that point, because then you're getting him at a better ADP cost than majority of the tournament has. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, yes to both of those.
Yeah, you would get Pickens at a much friendlier cost, but he just wouldn't have the same safe floor in an offense like. And again, that's just that example. Like we just know that they would run the ball a lot and stuff like that. Um, I wouldn't trust his ADP as much. I like the discount. I get him into some better builds, probably deeper roster receiver rooms. But you and I have both done that already. Like when we're starting off like zero RB, I know that you and I have gotten George Pickens probably as our fourth or fifth receiver plenty of times.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have roster construction. Where are we at here?
So balanced roster structure, leveraging stacks, target high upside players, diversified stacks, and use ADP wisely.
All right, let's dive in here. Before we do, be sure to smash the like button, share the video, and follow us on the FanSpeak Network. We've got all sorts of good stuff here. We're in the classroom. We're talking draft guide. We're talking best ball 2024. All right, roster construction, balanced roster structure. Aim for a well-rounded roster with 2 to 3 QBs, 4 to 6 running backs, 7 to 9 receivers, and 2 to 3 tight ends. This structure ensures coverage across positions while allowing for depth in key
Ye-
areas. So,
Yeah. So
go
we
ahead.
kind of hit on this. I said this exact same thing, right? When
Right.
we were
Well,
talking
I
about it.
wanted to go into something a little bit deeper. So,
Yep.
for example, when we're doing 2 or 3 QB builds, we're always going to tell you if you're doing 2 QB, you can likely do two mid rounds or a greater late. And if you're doing three, more than likely you should not have an elite. Probably, what do you think? What's a good cutoff? Like top 8 QB in a 3 QB mix?
Yeah, I would say generally that's probably like the okay. It really starts for me roughly around like the Caleb Williams, Purdy, Jaden Daniels thing. Like I'm okay at
Okay.
that point if I need to take
Hmm.
three. But if I have like Josh Allen, Mahomes, Hurts,
I could. I could do
Probably don't
Purdy
want to do
Goff.
3.
Purdy Goff are like right next to each other. That would be
Oh,
two
sure.
mids, is what I would consider.
Yeah. And I'm saying like
Yeah.
those guys are where I would consider 3, but not
Hmm.
necessary, right? Like now, if you're
Gotcha.
waiting and you take Tua
Hmm.
later,
Hmm.
could you do 2? Yeah, I think I'd prefer to put him in 3s if possible. Now, with that said, if you take like Hertz and then you get Tua,
Hmm.
that's okay with 2, right? Because you have Hertz. So it really just depends on who is your first QB, and is that person an elite QB? If not,
Right.
then you're an okay spot to take 3 if you want.
Right. Exactly. So again, proper procedure or suggested procedure would be two QBs late and great, or two QBs going mid round value or mid ADP value. And if you're doing three, there's just not a necessity to have a top 8 QB in there. I think QB 9 and after is a good place to start the consideration for a 3 QB build. I just did a draft with Baker Mayfield and Justin Herbert. Not even the case. I would consider Baker a late guy. Finished well in production last year. I think he was a QB 1 still, but still, like the ADP. Typically, I would want to get a third quarterback built into that, and I would say not a miss on my part, but somewhere where I could have made up more value.
Yep.
Looking at running backs, 4, 5, and 6 a running back build. So looking at 4, we're going to easily agree you've got to have elite guys. What's a good cutoff running back for RB4 with that type of approach?
Um,
Like it can't be Devin Singletary.
nah, maybe Montgomery.
Okay, so that's pretty close to hyper fragile because I think Montgomery's going in what the fifth or sixth round.
I think he's a little later than that. You know what? Let me pull up
Hmm.
our last draft here and just kind of take a look.
Hmm.
He went round 7.
Okay, so yeah, that would be
So
that's
so I'm looking
doable.
at
That's doable.
I'm looking at round 6 and 7 here. So
Hmm.
honestly, like round 6 through 8 is where you would have to have the fourth if you want to go that route. That leaves you
Gotcha.
some sort of Ken Walker,
Hmm.
Mixon, White, Warren, Harris, Montgomery, Connor, Mostert, like those
Hmm.
guys. I'm okay taking 4. If you start getting into like the Javante Williams, Ford, Corum, like Spears, like I don't want that as
No,
my
yeah,
fourth if I'm only
agreed,
taking 4.
agreed,
Yeah.
agreed. No, that's definitely too far. Not looking at an ADP board, I would say probably. I mean, I think I want to say David Montgomery is right in that Kenneth Walker range, but yeah, maybe like Joe Mixon. Maybe I think that would be like my last fourth.
Mixon went in mid 6 in this last draft we
So
did.
so again, even lower than that. Yeah, even lower than that. Because I
Yeah.
still think that you could do that. I mean, you and I will never suggest to folks to start off 0-4-2-0. But if you did, and then you just hit on receiver after that, you could finish it off. But I just wouldn't like how everything else looks. So again, I don't think it's recommended. Like when they say like balanced structure, I don't consider 4 running backs as a balanced structure, right? I think it's more equitable to 6. Any keynotes for 6 running backs? I mean, I know that we've talked about if you're taking 2 guys from the same team, definitely has to be in a 6 RB build. For me, with 6 RBs, I really like to go double anchor and then just wait on my final 4. Anything similar, dissimilar there?
I mean, 6 kind of gives you a wide variety of what you can do. I actually, with 6, prefer to take one guy early, wait a
Hmm.
little bit, take another guy, take like a Mixon or a White or something, wait a
Hmm.
little bit, take another one, and then at the end, hit like 2 rookies and another dark horse guy.
Right.
That's the way I don't. I'm also okay doing like double anchor. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. I think I just prefer
Hmm.
to kind of spread it out a little bit more and take one from, top, one middle, one a little less of the middle, one down, and then just kind of
Hmm.
fill out, as I go through the draft as well. But again, it's all situational based. Everyone needs to know that no matter what we say here, everything is situational based on your team, how the draft
Hmm.
is going. Drafts are wild at times where quarterbacks are going really heavy and you can kind of scoop up some value on wide receivers and running backs. It really depends. So everything's situational based. Look at your team, look at your roster, and kind of go from there.
Moving over to receivers, for me, it's really about the strength of my group. The stronger it is, the lower the number I can go. Any argument there?
No, no, yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, if you have 6 solid, even if you take
I
like
mean,
a Rashad Bateman,
l-
or I know you're not going to like it, but an Adam Thielen as your
oh,
seventh, I know. Just take a
brutal.
tums, take a tums, calm down. Take a Midol, chill out. Okay. Uh, I still think that's fine, right? Like you get 6 solid at any one point. If you went like really heavy, like 3 or 4 rounds
You
straight.
mean like I did last night? I went 6 wide receivers heavy, right? 6
Yeah,
wide
yeah, yeah.
receivers right out of the gate,
Exactly.
and I didn't take another one until round, I think it was 17. I took my 6th one or my
Who was
7th
it?
one.
Who was it? You remember?
I don't, but I think I could probably
Because
tell
you
you
can
here.
still get a sleeper receiver or whoever like in that range who is attached to a high scoring offense that you can just, hey, all right, cool, I've got a really strong set of 6. I'll just sprinkle this guy on, with my last pick, round 17 pick, whatever it is.
I took Demarcus Robinson. That
Mhm.
was in round, was that 16? It was pick 178.
Did you
And
have
that
Puka
was,
or Cup?
I had Puka and I
Yep.
also had Stafford. So I
So again,
just
bringing that back to
double
our
stacked.
our double stacking conversation from before. Love
Yep.
that. Love that. Okay, no, awesome. Again, the better they are, the lower the number you can get. It's just that simple. If you're taking 9 receivers, it's because you went double anchor or hypofragile running back approach, where you went RB and then something else, or RB and then did whatever from there.
Yep.
Okay, and lastly, tight ends very similar to quarterbacks. It's late and great. It's double mid, or it's 3 mid to late. Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I
Never
mean,
one,
it's
never four.
never one, never four. Yes, yes. Very good. Also with quarterbacks, never one, never four. Very
That's
good.
right.
Very good. Um, what's your favorite late and great pairing in it for tight ends?
Late and great. Probably like Kincaid, Luke Musgrave.
Okay. Okay. I still kind of consider that mid. Like I've also feel like Komet and Musgrave, they're feeling like they're extending the mid tight end tier a little bit. But they are falling right after, I think, like yours and mine's like
I
checkpoint
mean,
of
Musgrave goes generally in round 13. You think that that's not late
that's
enough?
not no, 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 no. I'm no, that's late. What I'm saying is that what the production that they're gonna give us feels safer. Like what I'm hearing like from camp and the tea leaves and the news and stuff like that. Like both of those guys are getting good reports at camp. I mean, and they're gonna be in offenses that are gonna be either better, like the Bears, or just as efficient and the Packers were from last year. So they're just good tandems to get in.
Hmm.
I know that there's a lot of targets in Chicago, but it's a much, much better offense. And Cole Kmet was a very good tight end last year. If he gets something similar to last year, you're getting great value. If Musgrave could get out, similar numbers to something like that, or just finish is as a top 10 tight end, you're also getting great value in round 13. So I consider them mid tier. I'm just saying, like, I guess my checkpoint is starting to feel like it's safer to extend off of what you and I have been talking about consistency, like Jake Ferguson and Njoku, or maybe even Bowers. Like that's kind of like our last ditch. Like, hey, these guys are coming up here. We got to get a tight end by
Yeah, correct.
now. Okay. Leverage stacking. Stack your QB with multiple pass catchers from the same team to maximize weekly upside.
Yep, I think
We've
we
talked.
hit that.
Yeah, we've talked about that already. And
Yep.
again, when you're trying to, just construct your roster that way, you also again want to keep in mind not overreaching, seeing what the backdoor options are for that offense, right? Like the Packers, again, a very good situation where you have all of that wide receiver ADP just spread out. So you're looking for teams where you can do that and where you may actually want to pay up for maybe a combination. Is there any one combination that you're okay paying up for? What could be anything? Could be QB, tight end, QB, receiver.
Um, I mean, paying up for,
Hmm.
as soon as you said that, immediately to my mind comes quarterback and tight ends, the elite guys, the
Hmm.
Jackson, the Andrews, the Allen,
Hmm.
the Kincaid,
Hmm.
like those
I've
guys.
seen you do Alan Kincaid buy
Yeah,
ups
like
quite a few
those I
times.
like because I really believe in the tight ends and the
Hmm.
quarterback. So like I'm okay
Hmm.
paying up there, but it again situational based. Like if I have Chase and I
Hmm.
really want to get Burrow, I'm gonna make sure I get him.
Hmm.
If I got to pay up around for it, I will do that. But I mean, for the expensive ones, like I'm okay as long as you truly believe in both the quarterback and the pass catcher that you're looking to get.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, so yeah, quick note there because again we've already ran through that.
Mm.
Target high upside players. Focus on players with big play potential and favorable schedules to boost your weekly scoring. I'm all in on this. except for some players, a few players that I still feel are overhyped. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Marvin Harrison,
No, Jameer Gibbs,
Jameer
Devon
Gibbs.
Achane.
Ooh, yeah, Devon Chan. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm in the camp of draft like you're right. So if you really
Mhm,
believe in those guys and you think that that's the way to go, then go ahead
mhm,
and do that. Obviously, you probably drafting more than one team, right? So it's okay to do that. But yeah, I mean, essentially to break this down, really low level. Take guys that you think can score a ton of points throughout the season, whether that's
mhm,
weekly basis or whether they have spike weeks, like George Kittle.
mhm.
George Kittle's like the famous. He might as well be the face of boomer bust, right? He'll go for 2 touchdowns on 4 catches and 100 yards,
Or
and
lay a
then
goose
next
egg.
week go like 2 catches for 20 yards and no touchdowns. Like it.
And 2 pancakes because he was blocking the hell hell out of the line.
Yeah, but I mean,
Uh,
you obviously need to score a bunch of points to advance,
right.
and but again, like I said, situational based. You got a
Mhm,
bunch of players that kind of high risk, high reward. It's all
mhm,
right to throw some players in there that are kind of more of a like Jacoby Myers, right? Like he's pretty consistently getting you 10-ish points a week.
mhm,
Um, that's okay too to put that in there just in case you got some guys that have a really high ceiling, have a bust week. He still might be able to get you those points, fit in as your wide receiver three, and you move on from that week, right? So, but I mean, you definitely want to target some of these players that have just unlimited amount of ceiling. The Bijans, the
mhm.
Achans, but some of these guys that might also have low floors.
And when you're looking at the upside, it doesn't also just have to be scoring ability or big playability. It can be their path to production. It can be a
Yes.
Roman Wilson who has very few obstacles in his path to earning more snaps, more targets, more catches every week as the season progresses. He's just an example. I know that he was recently injured, but he shed his walking boot as well. But there's just some situations where, hey, you read the room and there's very little competition. Andrew's Puka pick last year, that fits the mold exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, like this year, like it's Braylon Allen.
Hmm.
He's gonna be the number two on the team. We've already seen Brees Hall get hurt. He feels like a smash if Brees Hall gets hurt because
Hmm.
I think he fits right into what Brees Hall does. He's a
Well,
good pass catcher.
look at the
Like
offense, though. Look at
exactly.
the point of with Braylon Allen isn't just Brees Hall and his hyper fragility. Because he takes the rock so much he can just get injured on any play. High volume also comes with high risk, right? So while yeah, he's one of the better handcuffs right now in the later rounds, you just look around and you're like, man, this offense is thirsty for another playmaker behind Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall, and it very well just could be Braylon Allen.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so just don't be afraid to target some guys that have really low floors if they don't
Mhm.
play, have super high ceilings. Like at the end of draft, the Braylon Allens,
Yep.
some of those guys. Those are the guys that you definitely want to target. Same thing with Jerome Ford last year.
Right.
Like I took a ton of him. Nick Chubb went down. Jerome Ford was awesome. So
Mhm.
don't be afraid to target some of those upside players in the last 3 rounds of the drafts.
Exactly, exactly. Next up, we've got diversify risks. Avoid over investing in injury prone players or stacking too heavily on one team. This is more so about the overstacking, and we have talked about that. Diversifying to mitigate risks.
Yep.
As far as it goes with like your exposures, we've talked about not being over 25%. Is there any one team right now that you're trying to get off of a ton? Like you're just like, you know what? I'm done drafting them. I've got enough.
Oh man, got enough? No, because it just really
No.
depends. Well, yeah, it just really depends on the draft. Like, do I want to take
Uh,
more Cowboys? No, but did I get a good Cowboys fall on Ferguson and Dak in that last
mhm,
draft? Yeah, it just kind of made sense for me to do it, so I did it again, even though I don't really want to. But I did it again because it worked out in the draft. Um, but no, I mean, again, I mean, you want to diversify your risks for sure,
mhm,
diversify your rewards for sure, but just and I know this is about injury prone players on this question, and that's the kind of key is how injury prone is this player? Do I feel like if they are injured, is it going to be more of a season ending thing? Like I'm not on the Nick Chubb train. I'm sorry, I just can't get on it because he's had really bad injuries twice now in his career.
mhm.
I don't know how well he's actually going to come back, and the risk of him re-injuring is probably much higher than we want to believe it is for Nick Chubb because Nick Chubb is an awesome player. But yeah, I mean, there's just certain players that you just don't want to go too heavy on, but you also don't want to completely fully fade them.
No, absolutely. Lastly, use ADP wisely. It's just a very simple tiebreaker. I'm not sure what to do here. I don't have any stacking opportunities. Oh, look, this guy's 5 picks after ADP. It's my pick. Oh, it's 10 picks after ADP. It's just another tiebreaker, and it's probably one of the easiest.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well.
All right, last up here, we've got sleepers. What are we covering here, Andrew?
So monitor ADP trends, spot opportunity, injury impact, focus on young talent, and leverage late round picks.
All right, so monitor ADP trends. Look for players with falling ADP due to recent news or unclear roles, but have upside potential.
Yep.
So,
I.e., Jahan Dotson right now is a perfect
yep.
example, right?
Mhm.
Coach speak. Is he going to be the guy? I mean, he's fallen like 20, 30 picks in drafts now over the last couple of days. And I think it's just too much. There's a certain point where, like, okay, sure, they fell 7 spots. Maybe don't want to take the risk on it, right? Fall 20
Mhm.
spots, still fine taking it, right? Like, and again, I think that this is more of like is this a player that you like and you don't mind taking the fall? Yeah. Is it a player that you weren't really on before and now they're falling? I want to get a little bit of exposure. Sure. Is it a player that you don't like and they're falling and you're like, it still doesn't make sense for me to take it. I really don't like this player. Then just don't do it, right? So it really depends on player for me with this ADP trend.
I'm trying to see what Dotson is right now. I want to see like the top faller from the last week. I mean, the main thing that you really need to hit on here that we've been discussing is you need to get on BBMDB, right before a draft and just see where the risers and the fallers are so that if you're overpaying or if you're paying at market value for a specific player, probably a sleeper, if you're looking for like late round value, you're not really looking at the risers and falls for the top 3 rounds. Those are going to stay relatively the same. The biggest faller in the last week has been Hollywood Brown, followed by Gibbs, Lamb. Um, Lamb, what? 15%? Oh, that's 15%. I was going to say, I was like, what the heck? Give me a second.
Dotson. So I just did last 24 hours because I mean, really, we only got to speak this
That's
coach
true.
speak like 2 days ago.
That's true.
Dotson is currently down 2.3, but I
Okay.
see him go way past that in most drafts.
Interesting. Okay, now I'm at the percentage, and it's Marshawn Lloyd who is hurt. Kamani Vidal, bad coach speak. I've bought Kamani Vidal like 20 picks after ADP. Haven't done it in a while, but I did it. Hollywood Brown, he's down 14. Elijah Mitchell, he's down 13. That's interesting. Troy Franklin getting bad coach speak. I don't see, yeah, I don't see Dotson here. But again, you said it was the last 24 hours. But
Yeah.
again, getting into your tools, getting yourself updated, seeing where the market is, and then going from there. If you're going to jump in right now, kind of blind into drafts, especially for like Best Ball Mania 5, 25 bucks on the line for everybody. It's go time. We've got all sorts of news. We've got the ADP going back and forth. You want to take 5 to 10 minutes to brush up on your homework a little bit, read through the notes. Again, see who's up, see who's down, and you can go from there. And literally, that's all you need to do. Monitor ADP trends. Great. Go to somewhere where they have all the answers. Look at the answers. Go from there. Spot opportunity. Target players in ambiguous backfields or receiving corps where they can emerge as starters. Love this. Just reeks of Trey McBride last year. You're just looking at opportunities where, you might need a domino to fall, but as long as there's only one, maybe 2 dominoes, it could be a situation that could leverage you into that high yielding production, like those weeks 15 through 17, where we need 140, 150 plus points. Any spot opportunities that you can think of off the top of your head now where you're just like, you know what, I maybe want to stash that guy. The situation doesn't seem like it's going to play out how I think it will today, but down the stretch, it's going to return in my favor.
Yeah, I mean, I already said Braylon Allen. He's a big one for me.
Hmm.
Jalen McMillan, if
Okay.
Godwin or Evans goes
Yep.
down, I think he's a clear
Hmm.
winner there. Jalen Tolbert, a good one
Yep.
there. Cooks isn't any spring chicken anymore.
Hmm.
Bucky Irving, if I think that's a good running back
Yeah.
corp there.
Definitely.
If White goes down, there's a bunch of guys here at the end that you can kind of make a case for. Jalen Wright as well. If Achan or Mostert go down, I mean that could be awesome as well. So there's plenty of guys at the ends of drafts here. I would say probably round 12 and later is where these guys really start to kind of pop
Hmm.
their head up.
Yep.
But yeah, there's plenty of guys here. And again, I can't really tell you like go draft this guy, go
Mhm.
draft this guy. It's all based off of what your roster has looked like. What does
Right.
your build look like? What kind of stacks have you made? Is there correlation to bring back on some of your guys? So it's not like a clear answer, but a ton of other guys. Oh, another guy that I just saw in round 12 here. I'm looking at this last draft. Ty
Mhm.
Chandler, another one
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
mean, if
Ty
Aaron
Chandler's a very
Jones,
good example.
yeah, exactly. Like so, there's plenty of those guys, but
Mhm.
those are the guys that you kind of want to look for in these drafts when you're coming to round 12 or so. Is all right.
Mhm.
Is it are there guys here left for me where there's opportunity seems pretty high if something breaks their way and
Yep.
they could probably be a pretty good scorer for me. You want to go get those guys.
Yeah, I would throw, Trey Benson into that mix. Jalen Warren, Jalen Warren could potentially have top 5 potential if Najee were to go down.
Yep.
Isaiah Likely, he's a fan favorite for this scenario. Isaiah Likely's getting up a ton of coach speak right now. A lot of positive talk at camp, just on his own merit, playing on his own alongside Mark Andrews. So yeah, there's a lot of situations like that. I don't think we're trying to do that with quarterback. I mean, taking Joe Flacco as like my third QB in the big board with 20 picks was okay, but I'm not doing that anymore. I think you would agree. You don't have any QBs like that.
No,
Maybe Fields.
yeah, I don't know. I'm still on the Russ train. I think that the way that the Steelers want to actually play, I
Hmm.
think that Russ fits it more, where he's not just going to piss the game away that Fields
Right.
potentially could.
Yeah. My only thing is I still think Fields could be the guy down the stretch of the season. Into the playoffs if Russ either can't last or if they just need some type of change.
Yeah.
They're just a team that regardless they just keep cutting it close right down to the last game of the season for the playoffs every year.
Yep.
Injury impact. Consider players who benefit from teammate injuries. We just kind of went through that with spot
Yep.
opportunity.
Exactly.
Focus on young talent, rookies, or second year players. Often provide great sleeper value, especially if they show promise in training camp. They just all exist at the end of our drafts. Especially a lot of the year 2 guys. JSN, he's a little bit more mid round. Trying to think of other like good. Justice Hill isn't a second year player. He's been
Like,
around, but he's back there just the same with a path to a role. Trying to think of who else. I mean, we brought up a lot of them
I
like
mean, there's
Irving,
guys that,
Allen.
yeah, I was gonna say there's guys here that still kind of fit a little bit of both these focus on young talent and injury impact. Like Blake
Mhm.
Corum, if he gets
Right.
if Kyron goes down, that
Mhm.
fits that. Dame Pierce as well,
Mhm.
another guy that could do that. But yeah, I mean, like you hit JSN, he's like the focus on the young talent because I think he can get there without an injury.
Right.
There are some other guys in here, like Dontavian Wicks. I think he could also get there without an injury. An injury would
Mhm.
really help him, but he could potentially get there without one. Tajay Spears as well, another guy that young talent doesn't really need an injury to get there because I think that's going to be more of a 50-50 split with him and Pollard.
Mhm.
Chase Brown, another one. Like there's plenty of those guys as well, but you're right. Like we definitely want to focus on those guys because we've seen that those guys, when given the opportunity and actually utilize the opportunity correctly,
Mhm.
have a higher point value at where they're being drafted than some of the older guys going around them.
Yeah, I mean, and again, they're going to have that spring. They're going to have that jump in them. And when you get down to the stretch of the season, weeks 14 and later, you need all the juice you can get. And a lot of these veterans are still, they're recovering, they're managing their bodies, they're kind of easing themselves maybe for a playoff run. That's where you're getting that extra value from those young guys.
Yep.
Leveraging late round picks, use your late round picks on high upside, low risk players with breakout potential. I mean, it's just as easy as it says, right? I think it's more about identifying those players. Is there any key indicators for you to knock those guys down?
No, I mean, generally, I will look for guys that I think are on good teams.
Hmm.
Obviously, guys teams that are going to put up points. That's where the value kind of ups for some of
Yep.
those guys. But there's guys down there that I don't think the teams are going to be super great. That they could still be useful to you, whether it's spike
Hmm.
weeks or whether it's consistent play. Tyrone Tracy, Roshan. Some of these other like Malachi Corley as well. Like some of these guys that we don't really sure like what they can be, but they're in offenses that aren't top tier, but could
Hmm.
still be serviceable at times. I'm trying to think if there's more. Like Jermaine Burton is a good one for a good team. He's a guy that I like. just based off of what he did in college, based off of what the team looks like around him, he's probably going to be the three. And if Higgins or Chase goes down and he inserts into the two, or even still as a three, there's value in that because Cincinnati's probably going to put up some points. So there's definitely guys here that you can leverage as late round picks that have a high upside potential.
Yeah, and it really just goes back to a lot of the topics that we've been covering. The indicators for me are high scoring offense, like you mentioned, the clear path to production. There's either very little obstacles in front of you, or there's very few dominoes to fall. Maybe
Yeah,
you need some things to happen, but you're drafting them because they're either in that offense or they have that clear path.
yeah, and you kind of just said something that sparked in my head here is that also like if you're looking at wide receivers,
Mhm.
if you can get them on a team that they're going to pass a bunch, that helps. You don't want to take like a ton of a guy at the end that's on a team that's not going to pass a whole lot as a wide
Right.
receiver, because then the opportunities, even when given, may not be a ton because of the way that
Mhm.
they run the ball as opposed to throw it. Same with running backs. You want to kind of get them on teams that might run the ball a little bit more than the average NFL team. So
Mhm.
make sure that you're conscious of that as well.
I was going to ask you too. Do you prefer to draft somebody like round 18 that you're just like, you know what, this guy's completely discounted, right? Like a Darius Slayton. We know Darius Slayton's going to play a ton of snaps, but we also know that his upside is limited. Would you rather take a player like that more consistently at high volume, or would you rather take just different lottery tickets?
I
Because the lottery
think
tickets may not stack up, and they may not even be like a sleeper. Is At Perry really a sleeper? Is At Perry a better round 18 pick or Darius Slayton? I think that's like a
I
very
mean, probably Slayton, right, in that
right.
instance. But like Will Shipley is a guy that might have to contend with Kenny Gainwell, but he's on an offense that's probably going to run the ball very well due to their offensive
Mhm.
line. Like, I'll take that lottery ticket. The other way I kind of look at this though is like I'll either kind of take a lottery ticket or I'll take a correlation piece. So I'll take
Mhm.
somebody who's a week 17 bring back, or
Right.
a really late stack for me on a team that I need another stack
Mhm.
option, something like that. That's generally where my mind goes at the end of drafts is lottery ticket, stack potential with my quarterback, or week 17 correlation.
No, that's perfect. I like to spread it out. There's really again, there's no correct way. There's no one way to skin a cat in best
Yep.
ball and in fantasy football. Be creative. If you're drafting at high volume, just don't do the same thing over and over again. And it's okay if you are. You just need to recognize that you are and then pivot. I do it all the time. I just got done telling you I had 27% of Austin Eckler. I'm down to 24. 24 is my highest. And that makes me feel really good because I was concerned. I was like, man, like I don't want to go to the playoffs with someone over 25% on here. Like I gotta, start, running my numbers and start adjusting. And that's all that you need to do. So it goes the same way with, we didn't talk about it, but we'll kind of throw this on as a caveat, you know, to close the show here is how and when you're drafting with volume. Last year worked out very well for me. I drafted with volume all the way through the offseason. I didn't bulk up for the end. I didn't bulk up the middle. I spread it all out. 25%, knock on wood. Praise be to the best bald gods. Kiss my lucky egg. Please let me do it again. Maybe a little bit better. That would be nice too. You know, that's my approach. It doesn't have to be that way. I know other people that right now they're drafting 100 teams between now and the start of the NFL season and Best Ball Mania 5. It's not my cup of tea, but you got to find your comfort space and just keep, a nod on the tank. Know when you're too high and when you're too low on certain players, stacks, teams, even the week 17 correlations. You can again go to bestballoverlay.com. That's a tool that we love here that will show you your most exposed, not just your stacks, but your week 17, 16, and 15 correlations so that you can balance those out and make sure that you're building a diverse portfolio in best ball this year.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I like the draft the entire time as well. I will, in my mind, like to draft a little bit more come August just
Mhm.
because of getting into training camps, getting into preseason. We get some good notes and some good
Oh, it's so
action
crazy
on
right now, though,
players
dude.
as well.
It's so crazy right
It
now.
it is the drafts become a little bit more wild, but there's more information
Hmm.
out there for us now. So I will, try to put in more drafts in the late June or late July, early August timeframe. But yeah, I agree with you. From the time BBM opens until it closes, I'm drafting the entire time.
We also have one question that we need to answer for our boy Mike Robb, and we may have already hit on it, but I didn't want to forget because I did ask you guys to reach out with any questions. And our guy Mike Robb, always up in the chat for the pod you were talking about last night. I want to know what you and Andrew think you should be doing as your main focus for the last 2 weeks. So as we're closing down the contest and getting into the first week of uh, the NFL 2024 season, getting the exposure you need for players you have been all summer, or concentrate on more less owned overall in the tournaments, like someone who just started getting drafted in late July or August.
Um, uh, so twofold of the question here. A little bit of that last part. Some guys
Mm-hmm.
like people like Jordan Whittington from the Rams. I think it's okay to take that now because he is going to be lower owned. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that holds value within this big tournament. On the caveat of that, I also like to look at my exposures now and say, all right, I'm at this exposure on this player that I really like. Do I want more? Or am I okay taking a little bit of a hit by not taking him anymore or sparingly?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with people I have maybe 5% on. Do I want to get this to 10 and make a conscious effort to do that? Because if not, and the season's here, and you look back at your exposures, you're like, damn, I really wish I would have had more of this player. You could have if you looked at it right. You can make a
Mm-hmm.
conscious effort to do so one way or another, whether that's more or less. I think that that's very valuable if you are truly trying to diversify your portfolio or make sure you are in or out on your player takes. So yeah, a little bit of both, but those are the two main things that you want to be doing this.
Balance. Bringing up my low guys, bringing down my high guys. Andrew can attest. I've texted him now a few Jameer Gibbs lineups, not just one, but multiple Jameer Gibbs
Yeah,
lineups. I'm
you
well
kind
on
of
my
got a
way to.
little. You kind of got a little lucky with that because Gibbs now that he's dropping a little bit, you are getting better
That's
value,
what did I say
right?
I wanted to do? That's been the plan the entire time. I won't get as much
But
as market, but I will get in the market of his discount.
yeah, and this is true. But if that didn't happen, would you still be getting Gibbs at 12?
I still would.
Right.
It's
It's
just nice that you're right
yeah,
that
correct.
he is starting to fall. That was the plan. I said I want Gibbs. I just want him to fall, and that was my bet the whole time. It's not a bet of mine that hit. I mean, we're what 3 weeks away, and now he's falling 2, 3 picks. It's nothing special.
I
You know what I
think
mean?
it's funny. I think the furthest I saw Gibbs fall is 19. It was not my draft. I saw it on Twitter. Somebody posted it. I'm
Hmm.
like, that's a nice fall for him. A seven
But
pass
and
per
you know what his note says right now? Expected ready for week 1. So I was like, all
exactly
right,
right.
cool. Yeah,
It's
let's
like
go.
yeah, it's
Let's
like just
go.
fucking just and again, draft like you're right. Draft like
Mhm.
he's going to be good week 1 and you're fine, right?
Right.
Like yeah.
But
Anyway,
but again, balancing it out, top guys down, the same thing I mentioned before. Had a ton of Eckler. I'm actually okay, maybe even getting him down a couple more percentage points. Really, I have enough of them. I have them in deep builds. I still think even he will become a little bit more expensive. I know he's a really late value. No one's just trying to bring him up 5 rounds, but Lord have mercy, we've seen some crazy stuff going on. Like we very well could see that in the next week or two, where Austin Eckler does take a 2 round, 3 round jump. So I have enough of him. It's all about balancing it out. And then, like Andrew mentioned, just the guys that are now starting to plug themselves into our newswire, like a Jordan Whittington, Jordan Mason. He's been getting some good coach speak. Justice Hill. They were like, oh yeah, he's going to take a lot of snaps, practically like a starter. Cool. Was that round 16, round 17? Thanks. Yeah, you're going to start to pivot onto new concepts that are being given to you in the media, and then you're also just going to balance things out in your own portfolio. I don't think either of us are like, yeah, let's go get our 35% Brandon Cooks.
right.
Buy the dip. Like, not an example where Andrew and I are buying the dip. Maybe for some of you that are underweight on Brandon Cooks, this is a good opportunity for you to buy the dip. But it both will be true where you have them and now it's time to get off, and whereas you don't have them and okay, hey, now is an even better time to buy. So it just goes both ways.
Yes, sir.
Awesome show. Awesome show. Had a ton of fun here. Again, we covered sleepers, roster construction, injuries, and stacking in best ball for the 2024 season. Our next show, we're going to cover mistakes to avoid, best ball tools, exposure rates, and positional strategies, using those topics to better ourselves in the best ball streets. Andrew, why don't you give the folks a little preview of what's going on next Friday?
Next Friday, be there, be square, 8 hours, 7 drafts, one Jeopardy hour. Live stream 8 hours in a row, 4 p.m., 12 a.m. Eastern, next Friday, the 23rd. Join myself, join Bruni, join Megan, join Steve, join Spread, join a bunch of guests. Nez, from Badge Bros, Justin Herzig of ETR. We got Jake Wiles coming in as our rec player. We got, Coach Speak Index. I mean, a ton of nice guests. Hope from Underdog herself coming to talk to us a little bit about what Underdog has done for her, a little peek behind the scenes on the contest, how they're made, what goes into it, the journey that BBM has been on, and where it's going in the future. So a lot of good stuff coming up next Friday. Make sure to join us. We're doing some giveaways. It'll be a great time. Come hang, get in the drafts with us, ask questions to all these experts we're going to have on. It's going to be a really good time. So feel free to come join us. Again, subscribe to the network, like this video, like the stream, the 8-hour stream for us, helps pay the bills. And again, we appreciate every single one of you. Bruni, send us out, buddy.
Take care, be well, be good. If you can't be good at it.